All right, we're ready.
Good. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Oswego County Industrial Development Agency meeting of November 29th, 2022. What I'd like to do before we begin is have our CFO, Kevin LaMontagne, introduce the guests who are either here or virtually. And then I'm going to have our recording secretary, Len Schick, do a roll call to verify we have a quorum. So Kevin, if you would start.
All right, great. We'll start with the folks here in the room. We have Mike Treadwell, who's our CEO, myself, Kevin LaMontagne, I'm the CFO of the agency. On the Zoom today, we have our audit team. Michael Lisson is there, Jamie Galante, and Christina Andreco. Christina, you're there, right? We only see Jamie's picture right now.
I am here.
Okay, there you are. I guess when you speak.
Okay, we have
Perfect.
Michael, Jamie,
And Christina. Yeah.
Welcome to all of you. Len, can you do a roll call?
Sure. All right, Terry Toth,
Present?
Nick Canale,
Present.
Mark Greco,
Present.
Len Schick is present. Barry Trumbull,
Barry Trumbull is excused.
Tricia Peter Clark,
Tricia is running just a little late. She should be joining us in a few minutes.
and Tim Stahl.
Same with Tim. He had another meeting this morning with the county, and he should be joining us shortly.
Okay, we do have 4 in attendance.
So we have a quorum?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Could I add too that we have 2 other staff members that will be joining shortly, Austin Wheelock and Kevin Caracoli, our general counsel. They'll be entering the meeting shortly.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you everybody for being here. And what we're going to do is go down through the agenda. Number 1 on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting we had on October 18th, 2022. Did everyone get to see them in their portal? Okay, so I guess I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes of October 18th, 2022.
I'll move it. I'll second.
Motion by Nick Canale, seconded by Mark Greco to accept the minutes. Are any additions, errors, or corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are carried. Now, the notice of the meeting, Michael was put in the Palladium Times on November 19th.
Correct.
Okay. Treasurer's report, for this month, we have no treasurer's report to act on. And now we are going to the audit presentation of Grossman St. Amour CPAs. And I'd like to welcome Michael, Jamie, and Christina to do the presentation. And I guess I will turn it over to you 3 to guide us through the audit presentation.
Great, thanks so much. Good morning, I'm Christina Andreco. And as we explained to Kevin and Mike earlier, when we were planning the engagement, the ABO requires a mandatory 1-year rotation after a partner has been the partner on the engagement for 5 years. And so this was my 1 year to take a step back, and actually Mike Lisson, one of my partners, agreed to take over as partner for this 1 year. I will be back next year. However, he was leading the team this year. He also has experience with other industrial development agencies in other counties and other governmental accounting with towns and villages, things like that. So Mike has a lot of experience. And so I'm going to turn over the presentation to Jamie and Mike, who are going to walk you through the rest of this year's presentation.
Thanks, Christina. Does everyone have a copy of the presentation in front of you, or does it make sense for me to share my screen? What would be easier for you guys?
We do have it in front of us. I guess it's up to the board if they want it on the screen.
I think this is fine. We can follow along.
Great. Well, as Christina mentioned, I think I've met most of you before. I'm Jamie, and this is Mike.
Hi guys, hope you can see me in the background in our office.
Welcome, Mike. Welcome to the team this year.
Yeah, thanks guys.
So we are just going to go through a quick little agenda, the required communications, which you've all heard, very boilerplate, just information that we're required to share with you. Go over some quick financial statement highlights and some opportunities for strengthening controls. And we're going to end with just an accounting update that's coming down the pipeline to make you aware of for next year. So if you flip to slide 3, our required communications, just we want to point out that in terms of the financial statement draft that you have, the actual financial statements themselves, that's management's responsibility with your oversight, and our responsibility is just for the opinion. And we wanted to communicate that there was a new suite of auditing standards that came out this year that actually changed the opinion. So if you were to look at last year's financial statements and compare that opinion to this year, it's going to look a little bit different. It was meant to actually make it a little bit clearer for those auditor responsibilities and management responsibilities. So the opinion is actually right up top, very first line. Before it used to be kind of buried down a few paragraphs. So it's supposed to just make it a little bit easier for a user to read and understand. Our timing for the engagement was exactly as we communicated in the engagement letter. We actually usually come out on site. This year we had a bit of a COVID outbreak in our office and we were able to do everything remotely. So we're very grateful for Kevin and Karen and the team to scan and send us everything that we needed. We do communicate that we are independent. Management has made all of the decisions with respect to non-attest services that we perform. So those are services in addition to the audit. So that's preparing the financial statements, which management takes responsibility for. We do have a secondary review of the financial statements. So this year, Christina was that secondary review as Mike was the partner on the engagement. Something that's new this year is just reporting significant risks. So these are management override, improper revenue recognition, and segregation of duties. So these management override and improper revenue recognition, these are inherent in just about every engagement, every organization. They're, almost nearly impossible to overcome if you think about it. And segregation of duties, obviously, as we've discussed over the years, is just due to the size of the organization. So we plan our audit, with these risks in mind. And as I mentioned, the accounting practices, the new standards that were adopted this year, just changing the auditor's opinion. And all of your policies are in note one of the footnotes, really no changes to those, and no changes to your significant estimates. So, any questions on those?
Yeah, this is Gary. I read the draft of the management letter you sent out, and some of them were things that we dealt with in prior years too. And
Yes.
so I was just wondering, segregation of duties and stuff, I guess what I'd like to do is maybe get more detail on an opinion on how we need to segregate duties, the checks, the financials, with the money coming in, instead of having one person do it, like you said in the draft, make sure that we divide it up so we have second set of eyes on everything. And
Yes.
so if I know we're a small organization, but we still have the capability of doing these things. So if there's any suggestions, any way of proceeding, I think it'd be great to do it.
Okay. We can definitely take a look at that and provide some, recommendations, just how to separate some of the transactions we specifically, identified as, it's just, part of it is inherent, you do have Karen handling a lot of the financial transactions and everything through QuickBooks, and Kevin is really providing us that oversight feature. So one way to do it is to include, the board as oversight in addition to, some of those reviews that you have taken place, whether that's monthly, quarterly, or periodically throughout the year. But there are specific ways that you can segregate, some of the work that Karen is doing maybe between other people in the office.
Yeah, I'll just say from Jamie's standpoint, I work with a bunch of IDs, very similar to you guys, not a lot of people. So I do see the board, and I'll give you some very specific examples, send it off to you guys after the meeting. But what they do to kind of cover segregation duties, I work with Onondaga County here in the city of Syracuse. They're no different to you guys. They have really a 1 or 2 man band shop that does all the accounting. So I'll give you some advice of how to kind of, manage that, and, what the board does to oversee some of the stuff to kind of fill those gaps in, so. All right.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Any other questions before we keep going? Okay. We go ahead to slide 4. So we did not have any difficulties during the audit, no unusual transactions to report to you, and no uncorrected misstatements. We did have one corrected adjustment that we proposed. There was one application fee that was deposited into the main checking account and reported as revenue, and then it looks like it was inadvertently reported a second time into the savings account and revenue, and it was showing up as a reconciling item, almost like a deposit in transit that was never clearing. So that was duplicated. So it was actually duplicating the revenue of about $40,000 that had to be adjusted. So one way to stop that from happening going forward is the savings account normally doesn't need a bank reconciliation because it doesn't have any activity, it just agrees to the bank statement every year. And in this instance, it didn't agree for a couple of months once this happened. So it's just, adding a monthly checklist of, making sure all of your accounts either reconcile or agree to a bank statement monthly, can prevent that going forward. There were no disagreements with management. Assuming the financials are approved today, we'll have a representation letter dated the date of the financial statements, just stating that all the information provided was accurate and correct. We're not aware of any circumstances that affects the content of our auditor's report, no opinion shopping or other significant matters or issues. So.
Jamie, this is Kevin. I just wanted to talk about this duplicate application because to me that's a pretty big deal. I mean, that's revenue recognition issues. You're right. I agree with everything you said, and a deposit in the savings account like that should have triggered up. We use the savings account to transfer basically only. That should have triggered something. But the other thing we learned through this is with solar projects, we often get the application, really any project, but it seems more prevalent or more oddball in solar projects that the application fee or the fee from closing comes in from some entity we don't know. Because it's a complex web of holding companies and who's paying which bills and different things. And so what we've done is internally we have been generally doing this, but this was a case where we didn't. And we're going to name those deposits in QuickBooks by the name of the project name that we know rather than the holding company. Because I reviewed this, as you know, the statements before you ever got them, and I looked right over that because I saw two entities and I recognized them both as solar projects. I wasn't looking at the bank recs at the time, just the GL. Saw both those deposits. They weren't the same name. They had different customer names associated with them in the memo field. So that's an internal improvement we did too that'll help catch anything like that.
And normally there wouldn't be a bank rec for this account because it's a savings, so it wouldn't show up in a normal review. Honestly, from an audit perspective, we confirmed the bank account balances, and the confirmation that we got back didn't match, what the ledger balance was, and that was the difference. And so. I think that's a good idea to help prevent that going forward.
I think so.
And that doesn't surprise me with those solar projects. I see this down here in Onondaga County. They have the same thing. They put these names and they do like tax credits. They get money from one place and like
absolutely.
So I see the same thing with the Onondaga County down here when they have struggling with where we get the money from. They got to kind of like call them up and tie it back to a project. So it doesn't surprise me, guys.
Good.
I think it's important to note, in past years, we've had a number of adjustments. Obviously, we know, with Teresa and even with Karen, they don't have accounting backgrounds. And so before we were making a lot of or proposing a lot of adjusting entries to the books and records that, Kevin, I think you did do a great job at taking care of and looking at those. And that's kind of inherent in that segregation of duties issue is, you guys are handling so much that how do you break that up to make it a little bit easier for sure.
Right. Yeah, there were only two adjusting entries.
There were, which is huge.
One was a few lines, but two entries,
Yes. So if we can move to slide 5, we just have a quick high-level financial highlights to go over. So this is the statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in that position, otherwise known as your income statement. We'll start off with revenues. Really, total revenues of about $553,000. It's down about $250,000 this year. Really, two big pieces there. So the first is your application fees. So last year you had some really large projects that came through. I think one of the application fees in 2021 was like $146,000. So that was a big player there.
That was the Paul project here in Oswego, the housing project on Utica first. So for that one.
This year there were really only 2 or 3, smaller projects that came in. One of them being a $40,000. I think they were really in the smaller ranges. $40,000, $67,000. So
mostly solar projects,
Yeah, so this line is completely dependent on, where the projects are in process and when that is coming through here. So just a timing difference of the number of projects in process and their size. And then if you move down to the other revenues line, you'll see $16,000 versus $172,000. So this decline of about $156,000 was because if I back up 2 years in 2020, all of the COVID loans were given out and there was a large reserve put on the books because there was a lot of uncertainty around whether that money would be collectible. And then last year a lot of that money really did come back in. Payments were being made and that reserve was analyzed and redone. And the reserve was significantly high last year. It was able to be reduced by about $156,000. So there's actually a revenue pickup to collect that, reduce that reserve last year. So that was about $156,000. So that didn't happen. That was a one-time item, and so this year total revenue about $553,000. Nothing one-time or unusual there. Any questions on the revenue? Okay. If we move down to expenses, we have total expenses of about $657,000 in comparison to about $617,000, so just about a $40,000 increase this year. Again, the main increase here is that third line down, bad debt expense. So as I mentioned, last year it was analyzed and it was reduced due to the COVID loan shifts. This year, based on current year analysis by management, where current loans were in process, the reserve was actually a little bit too low and had to be brought up about $59,000. So that was a shift this year, and there's a bad debt expense of about $59,000 there. You'll see administration expenses are down about $37,000. Last year there was a significant number of professional fees for the Fulton Sewer Study, Nestle plans, etc. That were driving that professional fees and administration costs up. And this year your other expenses are up about $31,000, so they almost offset each other. There's that REDI local match included in there, which is a one-time cost, really driving those costs up. So overall, we have a year with a loss of about $104,000, really driven by those bad debt changes that happened. Any questions on the P&L? Okay. We move to slide 6. That's the statement of net position or your balance sheet. Not a lot of activity here. You can see cash of about $11.7 million, up about $1.1 million from the prior year. Really, that's reflective of the net sending out loans receivable. You can see that's down about $1.3 million. So just natural payments. Payments are being received faster than loans are being given out, and that's reflected in the increase in cash that you're seeing, net of the loss that took place during the year. So really no changes to general. As you see, your liabilities are fairly consistent with the prior year. Your deferred revenue is labeled at deferred inflow of resources, so that's loans that have been given out that you recognize as they're paid. And overall, very strong net position of about $17.8 million. Any questions on the balance sheet?
Jamie, could you go through a little bit of the net position? Because we get,
Sure.
and I ask, and I'd rather you do it than come from me, but we could ask sometimes, people see our balance sheet and say, boy, you have $18 million of cash sitting there, or, in the $20 million, where's the cash? Okay, $12 million in cash, but could you kind of go through what these reserve things mean and that a little bit?
Yeah. So the first line, the net investment in capital assets, so that agrees right up to your project assets, the $1.9 million, so that matches that number right there. And what that is just your net position that is, sitting in an asset form in terms of your property that, you can sell. Your reserved cash is the specific HUD and pilot funds that are set so you can, re-lend out.
IRP is part of that too, I think, the IRP.
Yeah, IRP, IRP2, all of those specific bank accounts are restricted in there that can be used for the lending programs. And the loans receivable is the piece of the loans that is yet to be received, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
And the unreserved portion is really that's the key line to see there. That's really what you have available to be spent that's not restricted for any specific nature here.
So would it be right to say, and I'm kind of saying this just to put some simple numbers in our head, but of $12 million of cash, only 2.9 is really free to spend.
Correct.
Exactly.
In a sense, yeah.
As Jamie pointed out, if you look, the reason they break this down, guys, into the net position is basically like $1.9 million, for example, is tied up in a capital asset, meaning you really can't convert that to cash. So it's kind of, that's not cash. So the next piece is, it's actually restricted for purposes about $8 million related to programs, and you can't use that money for other than very specific. So I'll break that down. Now you get down to loans that are coming in at $4.2 million. So then you get down to only, like you said, 2.9 is really left over out of that entire 11.7 to
Kevin for asking for his.
But that one, that unreserved fund, the makeup of that is primarily associated with revenues generated from administrative fees, primarily.
Yes.
Over the years, yeah.
In the past, it could also have been built up from the piece that you used to keep from the pilots that you're unable to do so, but it's a buildup of anything outside of your main programs, you know, your application fees, and other interesting things like that.
And that's the cash we can use to operate our day-to-day operations too, right? We can't pull from these other funds to operate daily pay
Right.
Correct, yeah.
operations through a county, or pay the light bill or whatever we have to do. Okay.
Okay. We move on to slide 7, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, just some opportunities for strengthening internal controls. We also have a copy of the management letter draft that was sent out. And these two comments are key comments from prior years. The first is oversight and segregation of information. It's really just inherent in the limited number of staff that you have on a day-to-day basis. Karen and Kevin are handling a lot of, the quick transactions, the handling of the cash, the checks, all that going around. So any type of, segregation of those responsibilities with other employees or, enhanced oversight by the board of management can help alleviate any opportunities there. And the second is you're required to update, debtors' financial information annually, and as we received, you're limited to what they send you, but there are a number of loans that you've given out that you haven't received, their financial information up to date on, more compliance type binding.
In this scenario, the New York State Comptroller, Lady Wise, they're really focusing, and I noticed that my local agencies here in the Syracuse area, is they spend a lot of time on, project management, the type of tax abatements that get given out, how well you're monitoring that, and spending time with that, and really digging into that. They really won't focus on the financial statement numbers. They'll focus on, hey, you gave out money to this organization, or give a tax break on how you've been monitoring them. And sometimes monitoring goes on for a long period of time, as you know, the pilot or something else that you gotta keep, so a lot of my agencies get caught on, forgetting to keep up the data and stuff. So just kind of strengthen it a little bit there so that, you don't get that, state comptroller audit that picks on you for that particular area, so.
Have you noticed or seen any best practices that some of your other clients have implemented that seem to be successful in getting more compliance from these debtors?
Yeah, they're being much more aggressive. I'll tell you, from my particular, the guys here in Syracuse and Madison County here, they're being much more aggressive and following up and saying, hey, if you don't, send us information, we're gonna, either, we're gonna send you a fee for not complying or baking that to the arrangements. I think the state comptroller gave them advice to do that. So they're saying, if you don't give us information, or we're gonna maybe pull your tax exemption, which is just, that's the worst case scenario because they're gonna become. They're actually making it much more aggressive to put it out there and bake it into your arrangements so that there is some teeth. Sometimes hard stuff that's kind of grandfathered in, and it happens here in the city a lot. They've got agreements that have been in place for 20 plus years. But for newer agreements, they're starting to put a little bit more teeth around kind of what we call recapture, especially if you're dealing with sales tax, or they're complying, they're making sure that it's baked to their agreements and they're sending out something. And they do use the auditor a little bit as an example. They'll say, oh, the auditors are looking for this. Typically, we're not looking for it for pay, but they try to use the auditor terminology to maybe get people to respond a little bit quicker. And it's been helpful. There's always a handful of folks that just don't respond to anything. We see the same thing here, but they're a bit better at getting information by getting agreements. I'd probably share some information after the meeting, just send a couple things I've seen in some of their new arrangements, maybe help you guys going forward.
Thank you.
Michael, is this written in their loan agreements and their agreements with the businesses, or is it a separate policy that they have to adhere to?
Oh, it's in our.
It's in both kind of per se. What they're doing is a loan policy. I got one agency that does all loans. Their one IDA actually separates the loans. Not for profit does all loans. What I've seen with the loan agreements now, they put almost like the terms and conditions that comes in after the fact. That gets attached to the loan agreement, and that's where they're kind of baking State of New York does to have, a list of terms and conditions, like 20 pages long. I'm not saying there's 20, but goes at the end, says, you also gotta be compliant with this, and that. We were right to, call the loan or, sort of a bank covenant type approach, so.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a quick question relative to the comptroller. Usually on an annual basis, and usually it's almost a year behind, we get notified by the comptroller that they want clarification on the way we responded to some of the information in the parish report. And typically it's fairly simple. We usually turn it around in a week or so, answer a bunch of questions on specific projects. Sometimes it's jobs related, sometimes it's investment related. Sometimes they're confused because we occasionally have some projects where the pilot payment exceeds the normal tax, and they really freak out when they see those. They really want an explanation why we're getting more than we should be getting. But it's clarified, and we've never had really any issue relative to responding and them being satisfied with the response in a timely fashion. But we get that usually once a year and it's the prior parish report. It's not the current one that's in place.
Yeah, it's pretty common for about a year out. I see this in my agencies or even my towns and villages with AUDs or SP3 in the school. They're basically almost like a full year behind. So we issue this, say issue this, gets the, reported up properly. A year from now, within 8 to 9 months, that's a great, that's quick. But that's pretty common. And what I've been seeing is the same thing you're seeing. They question individual projects. I do see that here a little bit, but the pilot payments, when the pilot payments are higher, because as I explained to the comptroller once, and they had me help respond to it, I said, the pilot's doing the contract. If the contract says X, they're gonna pay it. It doesn't matter if the assessment went down or if something changed, if they're required to pay that over a 20-year period, it could be higher or based on how you guys, planned it out, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. So I helped them explain some of that too, but we do see that here, but it's always really late. So as long as you guys are responding kind of somewhat timely, and get back to the answers, they're usually pretty happy. But they do realize almost every agency has different arrangements a little bit. There's no what I'll call cookie cutter, basic formula that they'll see across the state. So everybody has a little different, unique ways for economic development. So if you're responding timely, but that is 8 to 9 months out is probably common. I see that here too. They're not picking on you. We see the same thing with my agencies here too. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then the last item that we had on slide 8 was just accounting and auditing updates, things that are coming down the pipeline. So GASB usually follows behind FASB when it comes to standards. GASB 87 is going to be effective for next fiscal year. So what this does is it puts leases on the books as rights of right-of-use assets and liabilities in conformance with FASB. So if you guys are on any boards or have any private, nonprofit or commercial entities, that's 12/31. It's going to be for those entities, so you will follow next year in July. So if you have any, copier leases, any other leases that you might have, we're just asking, you really look at maintain a list of those and evaluate if they're more than 12 months. That's when they would go on the books. I don't know that you really have anything that might be significant this year. Because we did identify that, the street leases are separate from this standard.
Yeah, so you think about your IDA, they legally set up as a lease where you have title to it, but to give the taxes, that does not get captured in this. You don't have to put an asset on your books and a big liability, so it's excluded from this accounting standard. This is more your pure traditional lease with a third party, like a copier or a piece of equipment per se. So
we've been doing a lot more of that actually because we're not using the pilot funds for direct loans. We're using them more to lease equipment and things like that for customers. So you're not talking about our organization leasing a copier from Usherwood. You're talking about us leasing a tractor to a farm or something like that. Is that where we're at right now, or both sides of that coin?
Both, it'll be both sides,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
but it'll be applicable for next year because of the way your fiscal year ends, so.
Okay. So at the end of this fiscal year, we'll need to have some type of accounting of valuations of every piece of equipment that we hold a lease on? Or how do you figure the value of the assets?
Sure, yeah, if it's straight leasing, this goes back to like what I call lease transaction, those get excluded. So if you're holding a lease where you have title based on a lease agreement for $1 or whatever, and that does not get included part of this accounting standard. It's more the traditional, like if you're leasing, you own a piece of equipment used in the facilities, which you really don't because they have with administration fees. Or like a copier, it's probably going to be very immaterial for you guys.
Yeah, I don't think you have anything that's significant, right?
We have been well, this is a topic maybe for down the road, but we have been providing financing using IDA funds by way of leases for a number of years. So they're lease assets, not lease liabilities for us. So
Lease or account. Yeah.
So for example, we've got a big
they're booked as loans
refrigeration
now.
system that's for a food manufacturing company, and we set that up as a lease, not a loan.
Right?
Is it on the books as a loan?
Receivable for the books for that?
Loan receivable, yeah. Yeah, in all cases, yeah, absolutely.
So basically you're saying what we're doing is the way that it's gonna be required going forward.
Yeah.
So we already have that set up.
Yeah, exactly what you're doing is fine. What you're just going to have, you might have some changes in terminology. Because what it really is like a net investment in a lease. As you guys do the lease more, it's just like a loan. So you can call it a loan or a lease. Basically, in the world of leasing, a loan or a lease is kind of considered one of the same. It's considered a contract. So you're doing it correctly right now. It's just there's going to be some new verbiage, probably be filtered throughout your footnotes a little bit, but you're already taking care of that because you have the loan on the books, which is a lease or type transaction from the standpoint of you're receiving the money. So
Okay.
and there wasn't a lot of major changes in that lease side of the accounting. It was more on the other side. Where it's like an operating type lease per se, where you lease the asset. So from a lease or standpoint, that accounting did not change significantly per se, or wordage, but from the big scheme things, number wise, it won't change much.
All right, thank you.
Yep. That's all we had.
Well, thank you very much. I guess the only thing that, again, comes to mind is just going back to the management letter, any improvements we can make. If we can find details or other organizations, the way they deal with it or whatever, so we can improve our method of operation.
Yeah, we will send over some recommendations and some specifics that we identified.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Christina, James, or Michael? Jamie, I'm sorry.
I'm good. Gary, for your info, I have asked at least Christina, and I don't know Jamie and Michael if you're staying on for this Civic Facilities Corp discussion with a support agreement. Maybe not. I think Christina's planning on staying on.
I think Christina is, but I think we are not.
Okay.
Do you need us to stay on?
No, I've been working with Christina on it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, can I ask a question quick? I'm just curious, you stated that a pilot will make more than the tax itself. How does that happen? I'm just curious. Okay,
Well, in some cases, a pilot is a fixed number, and it continues with a 2% adjustment or something like that. It's not tied directly to the assessed value. It's a fixed number, so sometimes that fixed number gets higher than what taxes would be, normal tax would be. It was that way for Scythe for a number of years. Even though Marie Shad doesn't believe that, but it was that way for Scythe for a number of years. And it's not right now. It's Scythe is probably about 80% of what normal tax would be. But it also does two things. Sometimes by having a pilot in place, it kind of locks in the company, and they don't challenge their assessment consistently over and over and over again, and get it lowered. In some cases, because when you got a pilot, you got a contract in place, so you don't want to break that contract because you don't know what may happen in the future. So therefore, you ride with it, even though you're maybe paying a little bit of what could be a premium.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Another way that's happened recently is like the Latatra building in Oswego here is we have a fixed annual payment pilot with that building, and because of the timing of the reassessment, our pilot payment started before it was reassessed from the global buffet to whatever it is now. So that might even happen for 2 years. That the fixed payments just were higher than the assessment times the tax rate, basically. It's just hadn't the lag of assessment, and then it doesn't affect until like 1 year later the actual taxes. So there can be those issues too.
And some of the pilots are structured whereby there's a if you do better, you pay more, and sometimes that can drive it up, or it actually is greater than what the assessment is.
For one particular year and lower for the next year, and that balances out.
Right.
Plus, for financing purposes, if you have a pilot, you've got fixed payments. You know exactly what your payments are gonna be every year, where if it's assessed or whatever, it can fluctuate and change. So for financing, this is, pilot is a good way of doing it.
But the vast majority of pilots are tied to the uniform tax exempt policy, where they're for non-manufacturing, it's a 10-year pilot with certain percentages exempted from the assessed value, which is evaluated every year. So it changes, could change a little bit every year. And for manufacturing, it's a 20-year pilot with a different exemption schedule. And so those can bounce around a little bit, but they're tied strictly to assessments. The assessor changes these more so than the IEA.
Well, stop, Mark.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Very clear.
Okay, now number 5, the Oswego County Civic Facilities Corporation.
Yeah, I can take that one. I asked Christina to join. So, and Mark and Tricia, you're new to the board, so you don't have the history of this Oswego County Civic Facilities Corp that some of the members have. But 10 years, a little over 10 years ago, the New York State law changed, and the IDA can no longer provide bond financing for not-for-profits. And historically, we've talked about this in meetings before, but historically they've done a fair amount of that as a revenue source and helpful to Oswego County opportunities, Oswego Health, different ones over the years. But the IDA, or the state, took that power away from IDA, so instead, in cooperation with the county, we formed this Oswego County Civic Facilities Corp, which has been under our roof to administer. It's technically an extension of the county government. It's much like an LLC. The county government is considered the sole member of, like Oswego County is the sole member, but we administer it here. And we had never used it until about a year ago when we did a refinancing bond for the library. So we had been filing state, this no audit, like no financial audit with Christina, because there are no transactions, not even a bank account actually, until the library project came up. But now that we have activity and transactions and we have this one bond outstanding, I mean, but when I say transactions, we have like 3, Christina, I think that we're trying to close the audit year of last year. So, the trouble is that there's very limited activity, so because the IDA couldn't do the refinancing of the library, it was done through the Civic Facilities Corp. Now there's a bank account balance, there's transactions, so, and the state requires it. Personally, I mean, I don't argue the state law, but it's kind of crazy. I mean, there's approximately $10,000 on deposit, one bank account, a couple of transactions. A private business would never run an audit for that, but it is a state requirement. The trouble is the fee from the IDA, from the library deal is $500 a year. We got initial fees for the project. So we have money on account we'll pay for approximately 2 years of auditing. Say there's no other cost. There could be some we may get an issue that comes up that needs some Kevin's time or some other, there could be some other administrative costs. But in my words, and Christina will say it, I guess, her way, but in a sense, the Civic Facilities Corp is technically bankrupt because they can't afford to maintain their statutory obligations of doing this audit for more than like less than 2 years, basically, based on the current audit fees and what they have on account and the $500 a year of income. And there's no, as management, we can't say, well, we have this other deal with Farnham or somebody to finance something where we'll get another chunk of project fees. And maybe we could restructure the annual fee to get a little more income annually out of these deals, which we might do in the future, but it wasn't in place for the library.
There's additional time and effort associated with the ABO reporting and all that stuff you have to do for the Civic Facility Corporation as well.
Which we had done a very simplified version of for the last 10 or 11 years, but now
Nothing to report. All we had to do was list the board members, period. Pretty much, that was it.
And so Christina and I have been working on getting the audit closed, and Christina, you can restate this, but in some sense, she can't issue a clean audit opinion because the company, Oswego County Civic Facilities Corp. Inc., isn't viable. It has obligations that it can't continue to meet based on its income or its assets, you know? So what she has asked that this, or what I'm asking the board to consider is some type of support agreement where the IDA would step in and say, we'll pay for Oswego County Civic Facility Corporation expenses kind of indefinitely if it can't support itself. And the reason to do that is the missions basically are in alignment, that this was a function the IDA has historically provided as financing and not-for-profits. Now it's split out in this other company. That other company really can't survive on its own at this time. So basically the Civic Facilities Corp is asking the IDA to come up to sign this support agreement. I think the liability to the IDA is something like, I mean, on the high side, probably $6,000 a year. It's not a very significant amount of money for the IDA, but it is an annual kind of obligation. The audit cost was $4,750, I think, from top of mind, and then some allowance for maybe some other legal costs or other things that might come up in a given year.
So what's the reason for the expense on the audit costs? I mean, we're only talking about 3 transactions and 10 grand in the bank. I mean, that seems excessive for an audit.
It's actually, I mean, we didn't go out to bid, but in talking to a couple of different audit firms, and Christina included, one of the reasons, I mean, all the work still has to be done,
Right.
of course, but I mean, it's still 3 transactions, but because we have the same policies, the same staff, the same kind of routines, actually it's an easier audit than if it was completely separate, not run by the same people, basically. Like similar policies to the IDA, and in talking to Christina, like an audit out of the blue would have been, and another audit firm I discussed this with would have been in like the 5 digits, $10,000, $11,000. So someone had to come in without any background in how we do business, how we do transactions. But since we're using basically the same procedures as we do for IDA or really for OC2, Grossman is familiar with that. So Christina, maybe you could say some more.
Yeah, I
I'm
can
probably
speak to that a
swimming
little
in
bit.
deep water
So
here.
just to give you a little bit of clarity, I know that there aren't a significant number of transactions. There's still a full risk assessment and full evaluation of the entity that's required. Industry practice, I'll tell you, I fall out of my chair if anybody would consider doing it for probably less than $10,000 to $12,000. So you have to remember that there's a lot of scrutiny on organizations like this because of the nature of issuing tax exempt bonds. So there's a lot of compliance requirements, there's a lot of other evaluations. So because of our familiarity with the organization and the fact that we already do work with both OOC and the IDA, and the same players and same processes are in place, we were able to provide you a discount, a pretty significant one, especially for a first year audit like this. So and I understand that maybe it seems high based on the number of transactions, but there's a lot of other work that goes into it. I'm also required to have a second partner read it and be involved in order for us to be in compliance with auditing requirements. And so it is a very these types of transactions are very, very complex.
So it's different than just doing a tax return for a company that only had 3 transactions. It's much
Absolutely,
easier.
it is not, it is worlds apart. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm looking at the binder, and we are subject to peer review as well, so you have to remember as well that every audit that goes out of this audit office has to be in full compliance. None of us are willing to put our licenses on the line to really shortcut anything. So you're getting a full audit, but there's about 50 work papers in this file just to document the policies and procedures and perform that full risk assessment. So, but again, we were able to give you a little bit of a break because we already knew the processes and procedures from our work with OOC and the IGA. So I do believe that our cost is very fair, and it will go up a little bit each year as the audit requirements change. But I think the matter at hand is really evaluating how you're going to structure future deals, right? As well as how you're going to make a commitment to the organization so that we can issue a clean opinion. Because as it stands right now, as Kevin mentioned, you have a going concern. So that means that the organization doesn't have the future viability to meet the obligations that it's required to.
Let me ask this question. Is there potential for any future transactions?
Well, there's,
Like reasonably expected future transactions?
well, that's the reason we created this, because when we created this, we had previously did a lot of 501c3 transactions with Oswego Hospital, Oswego Health, Springside, a number of different places, with OCO. We did one with for their office building.
Okay.
But these were different types of transaction. This transaction was a tax exempt transaction, and it was sold on the market. It wasn't privately placed. We did some privately placed ones that wasn't that expensive. We did what, I think a $700,000 deal for Oswego Health for their office building in Fulton.
OCO's office building.
OCO, and it was it could be something, a YMCA building a new building, could be we discussed that one time before.
What would a company's other options be besides coming to us for this type of financing?
You can only do certain
Is
kinds.
there-
You can only do not-for-profits out of this. You couldn't do for-profit entities out of
Right,
this.
but if we didn't have this, all right, where would they go for this type of financing? Is there another option for them?
Well, you can.
Could they go to Syracuse? Could they?
Yeah, I mean, they could go to another civic facility corp. They might be able to do something through the dormitory authority. There could be but they would be more expensive options than our options.
More expensive to the customer.
Yes.
So it's worthwhile for us to support this and maintain it going forward.
Well, most of these little smaller facilities like this library deal probably couldn't even qualify to get funding from the dormitory authority because they financially are not strong enough to do it.
Okay.
That was the trouble with the hospitals. The smaller
So
hospitals.
this is worth us
Yeah.
keeping. My only, if it's gonna cost us $6,000 a year to
Every
keep
year.
this, we're not gonna do a transaction for 10 years. Is it worth even maintaining this organization, or
It's the cost of
do
maintaining,
we?
like keeping it in place.
But because we have $500 a year coming in, we have to maintain this corporation and pay $6,000 a year to.
Well,
I mean,
That's
when we forego the $500.
If you do away with it, you're never going to have the opportunity to use it for a 501c3.
Probably not next year either.
But before this transaction, we hadn't even done one in 10 years.
The big trend.
So,
Yeah.
The historically low interest rates kind of
Ourselves from not having.
it made us non-competitive versus banks because there's also pretty significantly high legal costs of doing a bond transaction versus just doing bank financing.
so as the interest rates go up right now, this becomes a more attractive option to
Yes, it does.
a non-for-profit to use this.
If they're going to borrow, I mean, a lot of the other problem with not-for-profits over the last 10 years is that most of them are like, give me $1,000 or I'm not doing it.
Remind me,
eventually,
what's
but
our
you have to get
fees
appointed by the
based for
county.
processing one of these?
Infill church.
Same fee as the IDA.
3/4 1%.
Yeah,
I think it's 3/4 1% for.
That's why we got 13, got 14.
So how big is this project for the hospital that we did for the library? A couple of $1 million?
4.8
4.7,
or
4.8
yeah.
million.
And
This, now, remember,
so
this wasn't,
a $500 fee a year for
this
this?
wasn't a new project.
Okay.
There's
This
also
was
an
a IDA, civic facility bond, issued years ago. It was about 6 or 7 million at that time. It was partially paid down, and they refi because of attractive interest rates, and they're saving $100,000 a year in interest.
I do think that there's.
They're saving $100,000 a year in interest, and we're paying for, they're paying us $500 and we're spending $6,000.
Well,
That to me doesn't make sense. It's, you
It's sort
know,
of like the start.
save them $100,000, let them save 95, and then we're covered. You know,
If we can do more projects, then those fees start to get to a point where they, even out and cover the costs of your things, but you're kind of in a startup phase where you're not making enough to cover your costs. But, there's a couple other things, I think, future trends that may help make more of these projects feasible. One, interest rates going up. I think also as we see a lot of this growth out of Micron, you're gonna see growth of healthcare, you're gonna see growth of other services that are not-for-profits that are gonna need to grow, and they're gonna be looking for opportunities to finance. A lot of times when they don't see just growth happening, they're risk averse and they don't wanna borrow, so that's why they're looking for grants. But if they get to a point where they see, okay, there's growth happening, we can sustain that with increased revenues, then they'll be more apt to borrow. So I think that there's opportunities. I'm not gonna say it's a guarantee, but
well, that's all I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
You know, is it something that's worth keeping? And if it is, then I would support it and
So-
use it as a tool in our toolbox to.
Well, I think, yeah,
This program we're in right now, the civic facilities, that's a partnership with the county, right?
yes.
So would the county be,
I don't think it's worth asking for that kind of money.
well, to split the cost?
No.
Not for $5,000. It's not worth having a conversation with those guys.
I would say, as a county representative, that he's 100% right. I think we saved that ask for something a little bit more.
well, there's other funding coming that we'll talk about later that,
More important ask.
is all right.
I'm sorry.
Needs to get through. Yeah.
Okay, is there any more discussion on the civic facilities?
So
Christina, or in general?
I guess what I'm asking the board today to consider is to authorize Kevin to draft, an agreement that would meet Christine, in cooperation with Christina and me, that would engage, basically, commit the IDA to supporting the Civic Facilities Corp financially. I don't anticipate any cash support will be needed in 2023, probably in 2024, because of the cash on hand. But to close the audit for last year, we need to have, as Christina explained, we have to have a clean audit, and the only way to do that is to have this some type of
So that
support
would be
agreement.
called, that'd be
Do we need more?
Yeah, yes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Mark Greco, seconded by Nick Canale to enter into a letter, how'd you phrase this?
I think call it a support agreement, yeah.
To do the audits for the civics facilities.
To cover whatever expenses.
Audit and other administrative costs, yeah, the audit, legal, other things that may come up that
Who
are.
did this?
Mark moved and I
seconded,
seconded.
Nick seconded.
Is this written as long as the organization exists? Is that how it's written, or how is it?
Oh yeah, can we change it if it gets to be too much of a burden?
Well, if they have the money, then I guess they wouldn't come to us to ask for the money, but I don't know if it has to state in that as long as the
We are all the
organization
board
exists.
members of that organization,
Oh,
so
okay.
we can.
This is like-
We're on both sides of this.
Some of you are board members.
Well, most of us, whatever.
Excuse me. I think if there's, in terms of the time, I think it depends on the compliance requirement, right? So this is really only an issue while you have to continue to file the annual audits. Should the entity in the future come to a point where there is no longer the requirement and there's been no new financial transactions or other borrowings, then it's possible that the requirement might sort of cease to exist. So I would make it sort of conditional upon their need for support. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it should never be money going unless there is a need, right?
Well,
I mean,
yeah, well, we're gonna cover their expenses, we're not gonna just
No, it's not a
say we're gonna pay
flat
him
fee.
$5,000 a year, we're just gonna cover whatever costs there are, and if there are no costs, there's no expense to us. So,
Is there any more
if
discussion?
it gets out of hand, we can revisit it, change our mind.
The only thing I'd say is agreements like this are used in private industry as well. I've been involved in several of these transactions where a group of companies might have an entity that's maybe their R&D company or a startup within the family of companies, and that company needs financing. So for a bank that it's basically a corporate guarantee from mothership to subsidiary or from sister subsidiary over to say, look, we're going to use our balance sheet and allow you to get your local financing, get your, whatever you need. So it's used on that end too. It's fairly common.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. So is there any more discussion or comments? Any questions for Christina? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the support letter for expenses regarding the Oswego County Civic Facilities Corporation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
So Kevin and Christina will figure out the wording on this and
Yep.
get it taken care of.
It'll be, in many respects, it'll be similar to the administrative services agreement that we have with OOC, but it'll be tailored specifically for civic facilities.
Christina, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Wanna go back up to
Yeah,
four?
I was just gonna do that, thank you. One thing I neglected to do is get a motion to accept the audit presentation for the fiscal year of July 31st, 22. So can I get a motion and a second to accept that? Okay, motion by Len Schick, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mark Greco. Is there any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay,
That wasn't it.
Mike, can we jump down to
Not stuck on your sheet.
do the stuff that's not an executive session and come
You
back
can
up?
do anything you wanna do.
Okay, I'm gonna jump down to 11, and we'll continue down with the agenda items that aren't under executive session, then we'll go into executive session. So I'm going down to number 11, the Geo Hotel Water Park Project. The resolution to extend the sales tax. So, Kevin, is that you?
That can cover it. Just a moment, catch up with you. So this is, of course, the water park here in the city of Oswego. We have, we approved the $320,000 sales tax exemption for them back in, I guess it was 2019, early 2019. They have extended a number of times. This is actually the fourth extension.
I was gonna say, this is an extended.
Yeah, we haven't ever increased the amount of this project in the paper in the last few months, but has been met with a number of delays. I mean, COVID problems with workforce and contractors, and the delays in getting the specialized equipment that goes going in, the amusement equipment inside. So it's, we recommend extending it so they can get the full value of the benefit we originally approved. There will be legal costs for this extension with Barclay Damon. The client will pay those directly. They'll bill Geo Hotel Co. Inc. So
I thought they opened,
they have not. No, they had in the
They came
paper they had
close.
said
They came close.
Oh.
there was an anticipated opening this like late summer, fall, like
Yeah.
kind of September, but it didn't. I don't
So
know the
I saw
details
some
of
big article in the paper.
There was, this spring.
Mike bought a brand new bathing suit, he's gonna be the first one to test it.
Ready? It's at the door.
I'll make the motion. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mark Greco, second by Nick Canale, on the resolution to extend the sales tax exemption for Geo Hotel Water Park Project. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Nothing's being increased, it's just extending it,
Okay. Number 12, TDJ Properties LLC, the initial resolution.
Austin, I think you're
Yeah,
gonna cover that one, right?
I'll give a update on, not an update, I'll let you guys know what this is. And so last month, or actually early in November, we received a application from TDJ Properties, which is a company owned by Mike Tormey. He's also the owner of the adjacent former Rosselli facility, and he's completely rehabbed that and now has a tenant there. This is a initial resolution for the redevelopment of the balance of the Riverview Business Park, 800,000 square foot, which used to be the former distribution facility for Miller Brewing. he purchased that earlier this year. It's very exciting because he has the wherewithal to do that. I mean, it's a massive project. It's $25 million project to redevelop, put new roof, new everything in this facility. But when done, it's going to be probably the largest and premier location for businesses and closest to where Micron's going to be. So it gives us a real advantage in trying to attract some tier one suppliers and other sorts of companies that are going to do business with Micron. So this is, unfortunately, it's not the ads property next door, but I think that all these things are going to tie into each other and kind of have some synergy. So this is a great project. Already talked to the county legislator, Linda Lockwood. She's very in support of this project. If there's any questions, I can answer those. I believe that, so one thing I will say is that this is, the applicant is the developer of the project. They're not going to be the company that's going to be creating the job. So they're going to be redeveloping the property, and they're going to, they have anticipated that there's going to be somewhere around, look at here, 55 new jobs created in the first 5 years of the project. I believe they're probably being conservative, just not knowing exactly who the tenants are going to be, but looking at some other facilities that they have. I anticipate it to be higher than that, but like I said, they're being conservative here.
Based on them leasing the space out.
Leasing the space out after completion, 800,000 square foot is massive. I mean, it's almost the size of a house.
55 people in
Yes.
So
That's just looking at the current jobs that they're looking, or the companies they're talking to now.
the footprint of this 800,000 square feet, what part of it is it?
So it's the former distribution facility, which is about 700,000 square foot, and it's the 100,000 annex building.
Everything from the kitchen.
Actually, everything from the offices over.
Is this the space that
This
the
is
guy was trying to
Harrison.
develop for the
Yes.
auto manufacturing thing?
Yes, and he couldn't. His issue was he couldn't secure financing. These guys were able to secure financing.
This wasn't Patterson's.
His space at Patterson is currently utilized.
There are two tenants in the space now.
Yeah, so United Business Enterprises in Patterson.
Because I know Constellation used to store a lot of parts and stuff in there for outages.
Yeah.
So we used to have to go in there with security and stuff.
There's about 200,000 square foot that had a good roof on it, and 600,000 square foot that did not.
Yeah.
And so
I was gonna say, yeah, this is a place that's really in tough shape.
it's
Planes going inside, right?
yeah. When the rain comes through, we call it the rainforest, and you can see it coming through there.
That's how they wash the floors.
But no, I mean it's got huge potential. I mean the size of the facility and the fact that this will be, I believe that they're looking at kind of doing this in a couple phases, but they anticipate being done, I believe, near the end of 2025. So they'll be done before Micron's done. So really, this facility is going to be ready to go before Micron's done.
So what are they looking for us to do?
So what they're asking for is a pilot agreement, sales tax exemption for the renovation of the facility, and it is an eligible project. Our legal counsel has determined that it's an eligible project to be done because it's
Manufacturing.
they're developing the space for warehousing, distribution, and manufacturing, and it's an eligible project.
It's 20-year.
They have not, I mean, this is just the initial resolution to determine the project's eligibility. We are not discussing what they're asking for in terms of value, in terms of those benefits yet. That'll be at the next meeting. But it's, Mike Tormey, and actually what I had asked if Mike Tormey or someone from the company could come today to make a presentation. They were not able to in short notice, so that's why I'm doing this. But we are gonna try to get them in for the December meeting to make a presentation on what their plans are for the facility, and which would happen before any inducement resolution meetings. And probably, I don't, there's a couple other things with this project that may push it out to looking at potential inducement in early 2023, Kevin. You think that's probably appropriate?
It won't be in December,
Yeah, it won't be December, but they could come and make a presentation on what they're looking to do in December. But like I said, I mean, this is
Wonderful.
this is really the big facility that we've always said, hey, if this could be redone, this could, really bring in a lot of great things.
I'll make the initial the motion.
Kevin, did you want to?
I just wanted to add it. This is really good, and this family is coming into Oswego County between the Rusilla building and the Miller building and spending, close to $20 million on speculatively renovate space that we've been targeting for decades to do something with. So I think any support we can offer.
They didn't ask for any support on the Rusilla building.
No support on the Rusilla building.
They did that all out of their own pocket, no help.
Okay, again, I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Gary Toth, seconded by Tricia Peter Clark. Any other discussion on the initial resolution? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, lead agency resolution.
You want me to jump into that?
Yeah, I think you know a little more on that.
So we've, as we know from other projects, the IDA can be a lead agency for the state environmental review of the seeker process. To date, the TDJ Properties doesn't have any plans to initiate a site plan process for the town of Albany because the building is presumably going to be used as is, so there's no particular need for a site plan yet. Depending on the tenants, they may need to expand, for example, employee parking. They might need to, create some outbuildings, different things for different tenants, which that would then trigger a site plan requirement. And also because of the nature of this project, this is a 2-year renovation project also. So we'll be asking, they'll ask for an extended period on their sales tax exemption. But due to that, in order to get this closed and get that sales tax exemption in place for them, we can act as lead agency because there is no other action started with DEC or the town that would otherwise be the lead agency. And then we would then, with Kevin's support, issue the, what do they call it, the lead agency letters or intent to act
Right.
notices, basically,
Notice of the lead agency.
with 30 days to return.
I have not talked to anybody at Barclay Damon on the classification or what
Yeah,
type
so,
of action
right,
it
this
would
is
be.
sorry, I should have had that open in front of me, just a moment.
I think it said unlisted, but it's not type 2.
Yeah, I don't, well, I
It's in the
wasn't,
resolution.
I mean, the size of it may knock it out of a type 2, but
It's a
when you
type-
just,
Sorry, the resolution, the lead agency, it's a type 1 action based on the
Type-
size, type 1. Under the massive size of the building
Right,
too is what,
right.
I guess Matt Kerwin looked at this with.
okay.
What acreage do they include in that? Pretty much all
All
the
of
acreage
67, the
associated?
entire,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
everything that's in the town of Albany, because there is a parcel that's in the city of Fulton, a small piece, but.
Well, that's in there with the other.
That's what we're
Oh, sorry, that's with Versailles, never mind. Yeah, it's the entire parcel. Yeah. So then, that would allow us
Should
to
be pretty
proceed.
straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah, they only anticipate renovation at this point, so they've had initial discussions with the town, and the town doesn't see where they would need to do anything.
Building permit only, no.
Building
no
permit, yeah, no.
Action that would trigger
But-
seeker.
Like I said, it may happen down the road, but then that could be addressed down the road.
Okay, do I have a motion on the
Make that
lead
motion.
agency resolution?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Nick Canali, seconded by Mark Greco. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried.
Do we ever charge anything to serve as a lead agency, or we just do it as like a courtesy to help them?
That's a good question.
I'm just wondering if
We
there could be
don't-
like
we
a
don't
$5,000
charge.
fee or anything
No.
on that.
No, I mean, there is no,
There would be no fee for the municipality to do it, but then.
you're entitled as a lead agency to pass on the cost to the applicant for the environmental review. And, we can bake that into the overall fees that are charged, so.
So if there is something, obviously, we don't wanna lose on it. Just
Yeah,
and
and you're
obviously we're
also-
gaining as a community if there's an investment too.
As a lead agency, you're entitled to hire, experts if you need them to do the environmental, like environmental engineers
Sure.
or other legal counsel, things of that nature that might come up. So it's something that we can note for this and then perhaps add a fee depending on how involved it is, so you,
Just add a cost covering
yeah,
clause.
right.
But due to the fact that if we do act as lead agency, that starts a clock today that pushes us probably past our December meeting, so that's why we're not looking at being able to do some sort of an inducement this year. It'd probably be January at the earliest.
Yeah, so it's a good point. So under seeker, once you send out the notice, there's a 30-day time period for any other involved agencies to comment. An involved agency is one that actually issues any type of permit or funding or approval for the project. So I don't know, for instance, you know, the DEC is going to be involved, or the Department of Transportation, or anybody else.
No, because they're using all existing driveways, and
So
so
it
far,
is-
there's no action that triggers DEC
Yeah.
requirements,
Yeah.
so no plans.
They send all their sewer to the city of Fulton, so it's not like they have their own.
Don't you have to get
treatment.
a letter or something from the DEC or something
Cause
stating?
we had to with our project we're doing right now, even though we are still doing existing property, we had to involve DEC with that. We were, of course,
So,
there are some wetlands.
what I'm gonna do,
DEC
I'll-
give us a
I've
clearance.
gotta review the seeker.
Great new grant.
Did they file a type 1?
Yeah, so this is just within the footprint.
Did a full environmental assessment form, or just a short form?
We only
The
have the
application?
short
I thought it
form.
was just a short form.
Yeah,
So, and I'll talk to
That's a
Matt
good
Kerwin
point.
about this.
Yeah.
If it's a type 1 action, then the applicant must file a long
yeah.
environmental assessment form, which is just a more comprehensive document that really, you know, digs into it. Both the short and the long form require the applicant to list what other permits or approvals are needed for the project, and that'll inform me and folks at Barclay Damon on who we send that notice to, because you don't just send out a blanket notice to anybody that,
You don't have to send it to the DEC every time.
unless there's a permit that they need from the DEC, right?
So if you're not dealing with wetlands or road movement or anything like that, then you don't need, or water.
Or some
treatment,
type of
anything like that.
environmental remediation within the building, an air permit,
Air
things of
permit,
that nature.
Oh, yeah.
Well, SHPO's another, so that's the state historic preservation, you've got, you know, New York State DOT, you've got rail lines and, you know, other, you know, loading docks and things like that. I don't know what they need. If they don't need any of that, and we are the sole, us and the town of Valmy, because they issue a building permit, then it's gonna be a real quick notice.
Right.
We can get the town to sign off on that and speed up that process, but
If they're the only one, yeah.
Do we automatically send letters to the different agencies, or how do we find out what agencies we send them to?
it's through the application, because the applicant needs to tell us what approvals they need for their project. to
The
go
application
forward.
in this case listed both the town and the DEC, but in conversations with Connie and Matt Kerwin and also their counsel, who's then kind of circled back with the client, they don't know of any DEC requirements, so,
Well, who would determine that?
the client. I
Yeah,
think,
the client, the nature of the project, what they're looking to do.
we don't,
Um,
I don't know what triggers DEC requirements or
Right.
not, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, if they're, for instance,
you know, because
if you're altering,
But don't forget, I mean, Matt Kerwin is an environmental engineer. I mean, this is what he does, the
Yeah.
guy that we're talking about. So he would also know if they're missing a requirement. We would, between Kevin and the staff at the
When we say the client, we mean the client and the client's counsel. Who is
yeah,
advising them on
and
this.
professionals,
Yeah.
yeah.
so if we miss one because they didn't, say I'm gonna throw the DEC out again.
Mhm.
If we don't send one to the DEC because they didn't identify the DEC as a interested party, we didn't send one there.
Right.
Nothing could go back on us because we didn't notify the DEC.
Right. I mean, if we don't, it's not up for us to police the, you know, the permitting requirements. It's up to the applicant to tell us what permits they need for their project to be.
This
viable.
often works in reverse for the IDA because we are an involved agency for every project we
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
and we are very rare, unless Kevin's the town attorney, we are very rarely notified with these notice letters that we're talking about sending out for this project.
Mhm.
And then in our seeker resolutions, what we do is we say, had basically in my words,
Mhm.
had we been notified, we would have concurred, or would have not.
The town or anybody like that doesn't want to be lead agency on any of these projects.
The town can't because there's no action. They haven't applied for a building permit. They have. I don't even know if a building permit is an action.
A
right?
building permit is a type 2 action.
Right.
Again,
Right.
Seeker 101, there's three types of actions. There's a type 1, which is the most comprehensive, which is what this is. There's a type 2, which requires no environmental review. And then there's an unlisted action, which is kind of in the middle, which requires at the very least a short environmental assessment review, kind of a quickie review, which is most times what we are involved in. You know, EJUSA was a type 1. Anything that's of a major project building, a lot of it's defined, or it's all defined within the environmental conservation law in New York State.
But
So if there was a DEC requirement and the company didn't disclose that to us, the DEC is gonna come back on the company, they're not gonna come
yes,
back on us.
correct.
And then the DC might run their own seeker, require their own seeker process, the redundant
Well,
one.
They often
Then
do.
that's on them, that's not
Yeah,
our
them and the client, yeah.
responsibility,
Mhm.
right?
So I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll talk to Matt too about it.
That'd be good, that'd be good.
Maybe I'm not gonna necessarily second guess Matt at this table, but, I would say at the very least, it'd certainly be an unlisted action. Usually when you're just modifying or renovating a structure, that qualifies as a type 2, so there's no environmental, but because of the size of
The
this,
size,
it
That's one.
probably triggers the
that's
type
what I
one.
understood from Connie.
It's usually anything over 100,000 square feet of building space automatically triggers a type 1, and this, as we said,
Way
is
over.
800,000.
When was this building built? This was built back in
75.
in the 70s, right?
75.
So, there could be environmental issues in the plant too, in the facility.
Those aren't discoverable in seeker,
Huh?
like asbestos or
Yeah.
lead, aren't part of the seeker review.
They're not part of the
They're
secret
not,
review?
no.
Well, whole complex has been thoroughly evaluated environmentally. We did studies.
I mean, there's asbestos laying on the floor in there, panels, tiles of it,
Yeah,
it's no secret
it's in there.
but asbestos isn't part of a seeker review.
No.
It's more environmental impact, not the.
It wouldn't be
pollution off
disclosed on the
site.
environmental assessment though, cause I know we have to do our federal environmental assessment, you have to dictate that. When the building was built, signed specified.
If
It's under a short form.
if the company is getting financing and a bank is requiring like a phase 1 and a phase 2, yes, maybe, but that is a separate and distinct process from the environmental,
Right,
the state environmental quality review,
it's different.
which is what we're talking about, that's what SEEKR stands for. It's almost more atmospheric environmental impact, like, impacts on the land, impacts on the air,
Traffic.
impacts on the neighborhood,
Right,
water, all of the,
Noise,
the water
traffic.
bodies, noise, traffic, things of that nature, more atmospheric environmental impacts, as opposed to, building materials and what's in it.
Well, getting back to what Nick said, if there's an agency that's not contacted and they found out they needed to be alerted to it, as long as it doesn't come back on us, it goes back to the company. And
Yeah, we could certainly ask the question, but again, the part 1 of any environmental assessment form, whether it's a short form or what they call a full or long form, has the applicant list. Part 1 is the applicant's responsibility to fill out, and part 1 specifically asks right up front, what other approvals or permits or funding are you seeking for this project, right? And so that's where they have to list it, and that's where we would then take from that list, and anyone that funds, permits, or approves of a project is an involved agency. There are others that are interested agencies, right? A municipality or a neighboring municipality could be an interested agency. The county, for 239 review purposes, which they review if there's a project located within 500 feet of a municipal boundary, a state or county highway, wetland, water body, rather, stream or lake or county facility, they also get to weigh in on this.
So they would be.
They would be an involved agency
Yeah.
because they get to make a
the
recommendation.
company planning would still have to write off on it, right?
Yes,
Because it's on the county.
Alright. So, anyway, that's how, we'll dig into it a little bit more.
That's the most critical thing, is to determine if there is anything from DEC, then they need to be included on that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, traffic and.
But we just don't know,
Stuff like
they,
that.
they haven't said.
Noise.
what
Like,
specifically.
Novellus, right? So Novellus does a lot, they're building a lot, they have DEC air permits, so they're DEC's an involved agency, but Novellus discloses that on their application.
Part of the issue here is because this is being done as a developer, they don't know exactly who the end user is gonna be, so they don't know if they need an air permit from DEC because they don't know who the user's gonna be, so that's
When
part
they
of
get
the
the
issue.
permit, when they cross that bridge.
That's,
right?
yeah, that, they couldn't do that anyway, that would have to be the end user, so, I mean, that's why there's some sort of just unknowns in this.
Okay, so we have a lead agency.
Where did we leave off
resolution.
voting on that? Did we?
We voted.
Did we?
It's approved.
Okay.
Approved, okay. Alright, so, GSPP 5059 State Route 104.
So this is maybe a project name that's familiar. This has happened once before. This company is, we're taking this one through the approval process a second time. They've come back and they didn't initially anticipate that they would have mortgage financing on the solar project, and now they would like the mortgage recording tax exemption that the IDA can provide. We have provided that with other solar projects. In this particular case, this project didn't request it with their initial application, so they've asked to reapply, which is what's going on now. We will collect another application fee for them, and they will pay the legal costs, of course, but that's $500, to be clear, for us. We would only have one project fee. This project hasn't never closed. So this is a, do I have the information on
So this has been approved already.
Yes, yes,
And
it
we're
has.
just looking to adjust
Yeah.
it to avoid the mortgage tax.
Correct, yep, and yes, and because the history with these solar projects is, it's hit or miss on this, most of them don't request the mortgage recording tax exemption because they don't get mortgage financing typically. But I know we just closed one fairly recently that did have, KeyBank was involved, and now this one on a mortgage financing, so maybe becoming more common. It's something we'll question a little harder on the application in the future, to be sure.
I'll move it.
Thanks.
Have a second?
I'll say.
Motion by Nick Canali, seconded by Mark Greco. All those in favor? Approved? Or, motion carried.
All right, good. And then, and I should, there was also a transfer of membership interest involved in this same resolution. I'm sorry, I didn't bring that up. This is GSPP Green Street. No, it's one resolution, but I'm adding to that motion, I guess, if I may.
Okay.
Very sorry about that. The resolution, yeah,
Nick, you okay amending the resolution to include
or the
the,
motion. Yeah.
transfer of membership?
Yes.
Mark, you okay with that? Okay, we'll take another vote. All those in favor of the amended
Aye.
resolution?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay.
Same thing with Mexico PV?
We get an assist.
There's a twist to this one, I
Yeah,
guess.
there's a big twist to this one. Mexico PV LLC transfer of membership interest.
Yeah, I'll start that off. So this is RIC Development. This is, RIC Development was the developer, of course. They have not closed with us nor started construction, but they're entered into an agreement to sell this solar project and a number of other solar projects to a large company called EDPRNA Distributed Generation, which is one of the, possibly the largest holding company of solar projects in the country. It's like this, but they would like the IDA's consent to transfer the membership interest. So it will still be Mexico PV LLC. It's just essentially the members or the owners of that LLC will change, just like we've seen with other solar projects in the past. So I think Gary wants to say something, but I don't see any reason from the IDA's perspective. I don't see any issue with this. This is very common. It's part of the game.
Seems like it happens every time.
It does, yeah, it does, and it will continue to.
Do any of these companies have a bad track history?
What happens,
Juggling back and forth?
what I see is that some of the developers that get the projects initially approved, some are better than others. Some of the
10 kilowatts.
less quality ones have dropped, yeah, just better at getting things done with the town. They're more skilled staff that know, like this RIC, one of the people on their team is the guy who wrote the secret law for New York State, you know? So, like in Albany, 20 years, 30 years ago, whatever. So they have a great team. Other developers we've worked with maybe don't have such a good team. And you can just see it in there, the way they do their environmental review, the way they put their application together, the way they manage the process, the project. So they're good and bad developers. I think that they all seem to get the projects done, but then they all sell them off to these basically portfolios of big money, Wall Street money, that buys them up and holds them to operate them. So there's developers and then operators.
What about decommissioning, you know,
That is an obligation that would transfer with the project because it's an obligation of Mexico PV LLC, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's, they're aware of that?
Oh, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cause it makes me nervous, you know.
And who's gonna own it 25 years from now when it has to come down, of course.
Who's gonna do that to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do?
It's baked in.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, it's in the contract, but who's gonna be around to tell them?
But it's in, I mean, they do have a plan in place with the town of Mexico. So.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things I can, so RIC Energy is also, they're the group that's doing the one out in the town of Oswego right now. It's raising the ire of,
The one that's not gonna happen, or is it gonna happen?
oh no, it's gonna happen.
Oh, it is?
I don't know of any reason
Yeah.
why it wouldn't happen,
Okay.
right?
Is there still violent support?
There's quite a bit of quite a bit of concern among the neighbors and lots of folks that don't want it in their backyard. But as was established recently and has been playing out in Minetto right now, if you read in the paper. Solar projects under definition New York State law and court cases, Supreme Court all the way up to, I believe there was I don't know if it's gotten all the way up to the Court of Appeals, which is the highest court in New York, but some second tier appellate courts have all ruled that solar farms, solar projects in New York State are classified as public utilities. And as public utility, if the company can demonstrate a need for the service, and public utilities by their very nature have impact on the area that they're set up in, but that impact is generally classified as minimal. I mean, so they're virtually always guaranteed to be allowed. Right? The analysis is based on minimizing the impact to the neighborhood. So ensuring that there's proper screening and minimize the disruption to the neighborhood. So that's where we're at with these projects. They're generally cited, will be cited wherever the companies identify locations, and those are not done by accident or mistake. They tie into the grid and substations, and there's only so many places in an area where you can tie into the substation for reasonable cost. The one in Oswego, town of Oswego, the substation or the connection is literally across the street on County Route 20. Mexico, probably the same thing. It's very close to where that's located. So I guess there is an issue in Mexico in that the local law says that there's not to be a transfer, no transfer of ownership of any large-scale energy system or special use permit will occur without prior approval of the zoning board of appeals. So the question becomes, and it's not my call to make here, it's really up to the town attorney and the local board in Mexico, but does this constitute a transfer of ownership? Because what we're talking about is transfer of membership. The ownership is always going to be Mexico PV LLC. That company doesn't change. If Mexico PV LLC was selling to, XYZ Solar Energy, right? Then to me, that's a transfer of ownership. But what we're talking about is the ownership of the company remains. It's the members within the group that are changing. So that's going to be a call for the town to make. I think our approval should be conditioned upon, the.
I think it's separate and distinct from what we're doing, though. Don't you? If we approve from our perspective that this is okay, then we are approving, but it's not okay with them, then
Right.
they can still stop it.
Yeah, I think our approval, I have no problem recommending that we approve the transfer of membership, but we have to recognize that there's at least a local law out there that may require the company to go back to the municipality and get
To
their approval.
notify.
Would it be?
What's the definition of large scale?
Well, that's the other thing.
Town
It,
approval?
under the town's law, Gary just showed me, it doesn't specify a megawatt level. Now, the state of New York defines large scale as anything over 5 megawatts, right?
How big is this project?
This is like,
This is 5 megawatts.
okay.
But the way they have this written is anything, and it says right here, anything designed and intended to supply energy principally into the utility grid or for sale to the general public. And this is a community solar project which does both. It goes into the grid, into the general public.
So they should go to the town of Mexico and ask for permission.
Right.
Well, this
I
is
mean-
this is what I wanted to talk to Kevin about, because this was a very, very difficult solar farm to get sited. There was a lot of talk, about 3 months worth of meetings, one by Kevin and Austin and Mike for some of their support and some of their information. And it came down to actually, the final vote was, it was passed by one vote. And I was questioned at length on our role in it, the solar farm policy. Kevin gave me solar farm policies from different municipalities. And I showed him basically, and I hate to use the word restrictive, but ours is very restrictive when it comes to building solar farms, because Mexico still wants to protect their farmland. This was a fallow piece of farmland that was just basically gonna get overgrown, but it was located right near a substation, which made it perfect. It was 50 acres, they needed 25. Mexico doesn't do anything over 15 acres, a lot of issues. But I told them that I would make sure I keep track of what's going on with this, and this transfer of membership, sale or whatever is something I haven't heard from the zoning board or the planning board, because usually they would come to me and ask me. So my recommendation would be, and again, I defer to Kevin and Mike and everybody, is to approve it, condition on notification of the zoning board of the town of Mexico, so they're at least aware of it and they can take action on it. I mean, I don't know how else to do it.
Could we do it contingent upon their approval?
That's fine by me. I
On
mean,
this notification, this way we're not sticking it, I mean, is it, I just don't wanna stick it to the town.
Well, we can't, I don't think.
The problem, the problem is,
I think that the town, if the town wants to make a stake over it, it's all
The
up to
obligation's
them,
on
it's
them.
on them. I mean, and if they do, then whatever we do doesn't matter, I don't think. At the end of the day.
the problem as I see it is that if we, have to start dealing now with every time there's a transfer of membership, go back to the particular municipality and check
Pain in the neck.
check their specific bylaws and stuff, that's a nightmare. I don't think we wanna get into that situation.
That's a good point, Len, because, and with respect to Gary, and I put myself in that boat, but for the fact that Gary's on the board is attuned to this, we wouldn't know. And but for me being a municipal attorney and having clients that, I know projects that come before these boards, we wouldn't necessarily know. The Williamstown solar project, none of us really knew about unless or until it came to light by, I think some of the folks up at the town and county legislators, but, yeah, so I that's a good point.
I think the only thing we could do is just, go back to, the company and just ask them if they've made all the proper notifications.
Or can we notify the towns? Just forward it saying that they changed, we approved it, there you go, leaves us off the hook in case they say we didn't notify them, or they should have been informed.
personally, after dealing in Williamstown and the lack of communication up there between the same company and, the town board in Williamstown, I would like to see RIC reach out to the town board and do it one-on-one, than have to say, okay, they went to the IDA contacted them, and then I have to listen to the zoning board and the planning board saying, well, why didn't they, it's right here written, why didn't they reach out to us to let us know? Why did we have to hear it second and third hand? So
So the tactic would be to
If,
ask the developer to contact the.
if we were to put, this is approved pending, RIC making proper notifications, and we did that to any
Let-
time
let them-
any transfer was made, then we're off the hook. No?
It means we're interpreting the town of Mexico's law as to what a sale is.
No.
I don't think that's a business,
That's
yes.
not what I'm saying.
But also, why don't we then notify any projects, like businesses are sold all the time? Like, I don't
understand why you would need to notify the town every time a business is sold.
that's, I guess, what I'm saying. I don't, like, why,
Cause it's in that plan.
But we don't know the laws of every town.
but also I don't know how that will be interpreted.
This is the town law.
I'm not sure this
It has
is
nothing to
sale.
do with this particular
This
project.
is transfer of membership, not
This is
ownership.
the
Mexico
town.
PV isn't selling.
See, that's what I was asking,
Oh,
is
I
it
thought it was part of
semantics?
No, this is,
I thought it was part of
this is,
it.
You know,
I mean, every action that we have to
however,
check with the town.
however it goes,
That we do.
you know, whatever the board decides, I'm good with. I might vote not vote in favor of it, but that's fine. You know, but I just wanted to let the board know that this was something that was discussed at length at our meetings. And
But
there
you
was
don't always
something,
have to recuse yourself because you have conflict.
you're
Technically,
probably right, I could recuse myself.
you do have a conflict if you're on the planning board and you're aware of
Just
it,
won't
and you're
know.
here.
See what it's like to
Are
say
you on the
no
planning board
for a
for
change.
here?
Yeah, so,
But let me ask this, Kevin, is this already closed or is this still waiting for closure?
In this case, they've actually notified us in advance. They plan to close December 15th.
Okay.
That's their intent.
So it's not like,
Who cares who owns it? Honestly.
From my perspective, I don't
So
care.
hats off is,
If we've already approved it.
Oh, that's right, that's the
Yeah.
other one, right?
yep, their attorney, right?
Yeah, I've got,
This is the one in.
Okay,
we've got like three
how about this
projects.
as a compromise? We act on this. Kevin, I'm gonna ask you to have RIC contact just to make sure that they're in compliance. Otherwise, I'm going to.
So they should contact who? The
Uh,
town? I mean,
The
or your site?
zoning board, not Waterbury.
But if our
It should
approval,
have some sort of obligation that
just,
they comply with
said
local laws.
you know, pending,
I don't like this at all.
their approvals,
I'm sure that's baked
How
into
can
every,
we-
that,
you know, that
it-
they.
it's creating a bad
How can
precedent
we
for us.
be the cop for local
But you
laws?
don't have their
I know,
approval,
I'm
you
not gonna
can't
sign up
close.
for
The
that.
only reason is just because,
All our
and this
brothers
is
comply
something
with
that I
something.
deal with, just like
Yeah, we
Kevin
don't
was
wanna,
saying,
yeah, we don't
he
wanna.
knows the
we don't
local
wanna do
laws of
it.
various towns
Just,
and stuff, so.
here's my perspective on
yeah,
this.
that's tough.
We want to maintain a positive relationship with the town of Mexico and every town that we're working with, all right? And so we want to be above board and cooperative with these entities. We don't wanna ram anything down anybody's throats, all right? But as Kevin is stating, it is not and should not be our responsibility to know all of the local laws in every municipality that we're dealing with, and whether or not anything that we do needs their approval. I suppose is my perspective. The town, the company should be the one that determines whether they need to go get approval from the town or not. And if the town finds out the company did something they needed approval for, and they didn't go ask for it, then it's between the town and the company, and we have nothing to do with it.
Big withhold zoning permit.
How do we know that they haven't reached out to them?
And I haven't heard anything.
He's on the board and they haven't.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean they haven't reached out to an individual who hasn't contacted Garrett.
Yeah, see, I don't know, that's why I'm just bringing this up.
Is there already language in the pilot agreement and the other documents that states that the project has to follow all local laws and everything? That would be a catch-all for this
that's
already?
what I was gonna ask, if not, that should probably be
That's
something
what I
to
was,
put in
and
there.
that's what I'm trying to search for right now.
Then I mean, that if because if it is and it's redundant, we're already,
Well-
you know.
Let's put it this way, we can act on this. I'll recuse myself because, like Tricia made a good point, because I do sit on the planning board. And I will call the zoning board and alert them to this, and let them deal with it, how they see fit.
I just wanna throw something out there.
Sure.
This board needs the support of the elected officials, all of them, right? So all the guys from the county, they go back to the little small towns that they go to, and if they're back there pissing and moaning about what the IDA did or what the ID didn't notify them, whether it's true or not, right? You don't need that. Why do that? Why can't we just float them an email saying that, hey, this change was made, email the town, it's done. I don't know why we can't do that. How difficult is that? Is that like a big?
As long as it's not making a formal policy going forward. For
I don't think we need a formal policy, but I think we should keep the towns informed if we're clearly making an agreement to change something that was already agreed upon, so that they can then take action in some way. Takes us off the list, if they start saying we didn't do it, we've got an email that says, hey, on this date, this membership changed, we're just informing you, boom, done. Quick.
Let me
note.
just say,
What I-
brought to our attention that this could be an issue with the town planning board, and this is something.
Just
that
keeping you
you
apprised
need
of-
That you should probably address with the town, and it's nothing that we're gonna get in the middle of.
You're saying
You
to
need
the company or
to the company, not to the town planning board, and
We should tell, I kinda think we should tell the town.
the town already knows.
The town already knows that they're making the change?
Gary's on.
No,
the
I
planning
understand that, Gary, is on this planning board, but not every planning board member's in here from every town being represented. My point is, it's not about what's legal and what's not legal at this point, it's about perception.
Do you have that in yours, Ken?
It's about perception, and it's about support for this board that I'd like to keep flowing
I tried to
in a
find it
positive
quick.
direction.
Kevin, how would you?
Where do you
contact-
draw the
would
line
you contact them by email?
on how often we do this is the question, I guess.
Well, I get,
I guess so,
If it's
probably.
brought to our attention, then we do it. If it's not brought to our
CC.
attention, well, before, but this is gonna happen on every one
One
of
person
them.
on the
if
planning
there's-
board,
if
the
there's-
chair of
if
the
there's-
planning board in the town.
who's the
so
lead
let them know.
agency on it, right? If, right?
We were.
Say it
Who's
was
the lead
approved.
agent, then
Being-
we should
No,
be
not
out.
we, the
copy
town
of
was the lead agency.
Oh, so then the town should be aware of this, right? So-
Yeah, I could do that.
Okay, so I didn't wanna get into a huge discussion, I just wanted to let you know there's an issue right here. We can act on this, I'll recuse myself. I've got a meeting at 3 o'clock this afternoon with some of the zoning board people, the mayor, and a few other things on another issue. So I'll have to bring it to their attention.
Gary, I mean, I just mentioned to Kevin, you can email the company representative and tell them this was approved by the IDA and copy the chair of the planning board on that email.
Zoning board,
Or zoning board.
Yeah.
Whoever that is, I don't know who that is.
it's Ned Waterbury.
Okay, Waterbury, okay.
So email the company, say it was approved by us, we copy Ned Waterbury on it, and in the email, we say, check with the town and make sure it's okay with the town or something along that.
How much work are we doing by NCC and dropping
That's
it?
nothing.
Very good, right?
And it would be your request for transfer of membership was approved at the board meeting on blah, blah, blah date, CC, then they get it.
Yeah, make it.
So to answer your question, Austin, that our pilot agreements, there's standard language in there that states as follows. There's a specific section that says governing law. Right? It says this agreement shall be governed by and construed in accordance with the laws of the state of New York. Right? So doesn't say all state, federal, and local laws. We could certainly incorporate something like that into future agreements, but I would argue that local laws are derived from
The state.
the state, under the municipal home rule law, which is a state law. So by extension,
That's a stretch.
Well, I would say
no,
applicable
I wouldn't.
local.
Listen, I wouldn't argue
I mean,
otherwise.
you may be the only municipality in Oswego County that has that in your solar law.
I tried to find it in
Yeah.
Kevin's, I couldn't, but I didn't work
So,
that hard.
so I mean, I think it's not something to just assume is across the board. It's a pretty unique thing
Right,
to Mexico.
Yeah, and the state of, like I said, the state of New York defines large scale solar projects or renewable projects, wind and solar, as anything more than 5 megawatts, right? So,
So the rules change for less than 5 megawatts?
Well, small as we
Well,
go.
their law
solar.
specifically states
Their law,
large scale,
Okay.
so.
So getting back to the local law, can we add that? And you're the attorney here, Kevin, so I don't wanna, I mean, how complicated or how much trouble would you run into, not us, but you, if we added state and local law compliance?
I don't think that there's much of a consequence to us by adding that. And keep in mind, the pilot agreement, I just read the pilot agreement, the lease agreements that are drafted also spell out additional requirements, which is why we are fielding all of these changes and assignments and transfer of ownership, because those documents specifically spell out that the IDA must be made aware and provide consent, which shall not be unreasonably withheld, but we need to be made aware of it.
I don't think we're in a position to withhold it.
No, I'm not
I think it would
recommending
be unreasonable to withhold consent at this
Right.
point.
No, but I can certainly see where in responding that this has been approved, we CC.
I don't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah, the.
And I don't think it's a set
Town
long-term
supervisor.
precedent to make more work for us either.
No, just CC the town
Especially because
supervisor,
we know.
right?
If we're doing something we don't know, then
Well, as long as we notify them, then we've notified them.
Yeah, that's
it.
fine.
We did, I don't think anybody can question, you know, we told you.
You wanted
This way
to
we're
the
not
town
trying to do anything
supervisor, you
wrong.
wanted to
Net Waterbury, the zoning board.
What
the
about?
zoning board.
But I mean, in the future,
You
I
can
would
s-
CC
You can
the town
CC town
supervisor.
supervisor Eric Bailey too.
I think it would be, yeah, I mean, it'd be easier for, on our end, I think, to just CC the town supervisor as opposed
Well,
to
Rick-
finding out who's head of zoning board for, I mean, this is something,
What is
I would
the
say
likelihood
any
that that's ever gonna
transfer.
go from there to there to there?
Well, in this
Or how about
case,
just
right
the
there,
town attorney?
the
Does
town
the
has
town
nothing to
have
do
a-
with it, it's
or
all
town
zoning
attorney?
board compliance.
Not have agreements with it.
But I think
CC Kevin.
out of respect,
Well, then,
Comes out.
Professional
Almost every town in
this.
the county, but I
Yes,
don't.
it is convenient, so.
Yeah,
okay, so,
I will separately, just as a courtesy, because, you know, I know Graham, I'll let him know, and I'll give him my interpretation that this was a change of membership, not a change in the ownership, because the owner of the project is Mexico PV LLC. That hasn't and isn't going to change. So,
okay, so, getting back to, Mexico PV, transfer of membership interest, how do we wanna,
I'll move
the
it,
motion is what? How's it worded?
just to approve it as,
Transfer of membership after.
Yeah.
yeah,
transfer.
just to
We don't need to add anything to it, and then we'll just advise them to
notify.
notify,
Yeah,
separate from the motion.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be in the motion.
Okay, alright, so I have a motion by Len Schick, seconded by Nick Canale. All those in favor?
alright.
All those opposed, and I recuse myself. I apologize for getting into so much discussion on this.
Who made the motion? Mark?
I did.
Lynn.
Seconded by Nick.
Do you anticipate them putting a snake up about this transfer of ownership at the zoning board?
I think they will. That's why I gotta sit there and meet with them and talk to them. Okay, the town of Schuylkill wastewater feasibility study, joint funding request.
Sure, this is an easy one, I guess, in my opinion. There's no membership transfers or anything. No, so, the background on this, and Kevin, if you wanna provide any more, cause I know you know about this as well. Due to the Micron announcement, the town of Schuylkill is looking now more aggressively at, looking at the feasibility of developing their own wastewater treatment facility, which would potentially handle going further east, going towards like the Schuylkill Pennville area, not necessarily the Village Phoenix area, so it'd be a little different area. But in terms of anticipating housing development and new business and other things, just having a need, and they have to do that, and that could also have some direct and indirect impacts on us in terms of if say down the road they were to do this, they maybe would pick up some sewer districts currently covered by the Phoenix one, which actually creates more capacity. So there's it could indirectly or directly impact us down the road, and that's why it's coming to us. Dave Turner from the county came and said that the county is going to be, so this is a joint funding request, the county is going to be putting up 50% of the study cost of $35,017.5, and they're requesting the IDA to put up the other $17.5 to do this feasibility study. I think it's CNS companies, I'm not 100% sure, I think it's CNS.
The town putting up the third half, or?
I don't know, I mean, I think the town is looking at saying if this goes forward, the town's gonna be putting up the big nut of actually doing it. But at this point, they're looking to see if there's any, funding to do this. Like I said, I mean, if it didn't have a direct impact on the IDA or IDA property, I wouldn't bring it to the board. But due to the fact that it is in an area of significant growth and will either directly or indirectly impact our own industrial park and the expansion there, I think it's worth looking at.
Does it impact any other commercial property besides the industrial park, or is it all residential?
I mean, it's going to, I mean, and this is where Kevin, maybe I'll give a little better idea of the specific area that they're looking to cover.
Well, they just completed a comprehensive plan. They updated a comprehensive plan from like 20 years ago, and they've identified three sectors, and they focused their comprehensive plan on increasing the commercial tax base. Essentially, the theory that the residential development is going to kind of happen somewhat organically, but they're trying to attract more business in to stabilize or hopefully ideally lower the residential tax base for everyone else. So they've, as Austin pointed out, they've targeted 3 different areas. One of them is a little further east in the Pennsylvania area. The other one they identified is in and around the industrial park now, and then the other one is I think further to the not south, because that would be the south and
We're down
east.
toward the river.
Huh?
You're going down toward the river, along the river.
No, I think it's east,
OTB?
south,
I was
and
gonna say,
well, yeah. I mean, the OTB area is certainly
Huntley Road area down there.
Huntley Road, but there is wastewater already down there.
I think it goes as far down as Burnderry, I think is where it goes to now.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Right. But let me back up.
Serviced by
The
village.
There was just an award granted to the town to do.
750,000.
No, it was a smaller amount.
I just talked to Dave Turner about it this morning at ADP, and he's not aware of any other. He just said that the county's looking to put 17.5 in, and if we would put 17.5 in, and I'm not aware of any other funding.
Is that half the study, or is that 100%?
I believe it's 35,000. That's what I've been told, and I haven't seen the actual proposal. But I would say that
reasonable number.
But I would say, whatever, if we were to do something, we would have to be further involved to understand what the actual, the exact costs and be involved in that process. Be it if the county is the one who's going to take it on, or whoever's going to take it on. Mike, is there any other input you had on that in terms of how it should be structured if we were to do something?
Well, who's the question is who the contract gonna be with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Usually we suck it up and we pay it all.
Right. And we get reimbursed from the county.
Reimbursed from the county. That's the way it usually works.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at the CFA application submitted by the town of Shrewsbury, project name Town of Shrewsbury Townwide Wastewater Collection and Treatment Study.
Mm-hmm.
And it was prepared and submitted in cooperation with CNS.
Usually
That was the CFA, or was that a component of
It
their
was just an application.
DRI, which they didn't get approved?
So you're looking up to 17.5.
That's what the question Dave
Contingent
Turner
on
was.
sharing in the information
Oh, yeah.
between the IDA.
Yeah, and I think we would have to see in the study how it impacts our
You
industrial.
would need authorization to pull that from
Of
the.
course, why else would we want to do it?
The town was,
Of course.
I'm looking at it, the town was awarded $19,600 for a waste collection and treatment study. This just came out. This is from,
Sounds like we gotta
Well,
figure out where that
maybe
1960
this is more detailed than that.
this was last week, November 22nd.
Well, like I said, that may be a component of the cost, but I
When
don't
did
know.
you talk to Dave
This morning,
this morning?
well, I talked to him back in early November when we first discussed this, but I just saw him this morning at EDP, and that was still the.
Well, we have seen no contract of any kind from anybody.
So we can. tell
Are we
what
interested in
do.
being the lead agency, in being the company that is contracted with CNS on this project and then being reimbursed from the county, so somebody has to be that. Is the county wanna do it, or they want us?
We've done it, I don't know how many times.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it'd be if the town wants to do it that way, or if the town's already, you know.
If the town's not paying for it, then why would,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
if we're paying for it, then it should be, the contract should be with the people that are paying for it, I would assume. I don't know, and then we can work with the town to dictate the terms of the contract. But if we're the ones that are paying for it, then we ought to have some significant input.
My only real stipulation was if we were to participate, that we have to show the value of the assets that the IDA owns, and how this impacts those, and how it improves those, being the expanded industrial park property. Because without that, without showing, you know, that there's.
Well, I don't know what the study's gonna be doing.
The
The study gonna be selecting one of those three locations as they prefer to site the location of this.
I haven't seen that.
Active treatment plan or whatever it's gonna be.
Well, I think that's, yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure. But I can say, I'm looking at this, the application itself, the funding requested was for $19,600, and that's what was granted.
If it's out of the ESD grant funds, they will only fund a maximum of 50% of
I don't know whether it's out of ESDC, I don't think it would be, I don't think it would qualify for that. It's probably,
Could be entirely different
Could
project.
be, yeah.
It could be, I mean, they're saying the total project cost is $24,500, so that's not.
That sounds different to this, yeah.
Well, I'll make the motion on this, share the, cost of feasibility study with the county, contingent on, a lot of factors, who's gonna be doing the engineering, making sure that, are we gonna be the lead on this?
I wouldn't have a problem with the county being in the lead, but I don't think the town should. But
We've
that
never
makes
done a
sense for us.
situation where we just give money to a town.
what?
And how it ties,
The county involved? Do I need to abstain?
No.
Sure.
You can vote
based on,
twice.
based on your concerns, also
Yeah.
Austin has.
I think we need to, I mean, we could approve it subject to, you know, being agreeance of how the funding is distributed and that, I mean, that's still pretty
Subject to the terms of the contract with the
yeah,
CNS or the engineer.
with the engineering firm, yeah. I don't think the county is also looking at just giving money to the town, I mean, I don't think they would do the same thing either, so I think it would have to be.
Well, that's why they wanna pay it through us, we're their custody.
So, well, what, I mean, if you guys were to agree,
A big Tuesday for feasibility
I could
study.
give an update again next month in terms of what we're actually, you know, how we're gonna structure this thing with.
Here's my take on this. I want to move forward with every water treatment and sewer project that we can push forward. I want to do everything that we can do to help facilitate those things. I don't think the IDA should be on the hook for paying for all of them, but I think if we can help in some way and move this forward, and this one can be justified because it directly impacts our property and some other commercial property in addition to that, then I don't see why.
Or other property the IDA is interested in acquiring in the future as well.
Sure. I think that's a great way to go.
You second it?
Yeah, I'll second.
Wait, Nick seconded?
Yeah, I made the motion, Nick seconded it. Any other comments or questions regarding the, shared expense? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You got authorized coming from the EDF.
You can make that part of the,
No, it can be part of the same
make it part of that.
EDF.
So specifically from the fund.
I would just like to add to what Nick said, I know this is what we're voting on, as far as water treatment. I don't think we need to help anybody build a water treatment facility that's only gonna run at 10% capacity. For the potential future. There's no growth coming in that area, I don't think we need to invest in that. We need to focus on the areas that we expect growth.
Well, you ever get funding to build it, if that's the situation.
They got one in Minetto.
What?
They got waste treatment plant in Minetto.
Oh, yeah, that was 50 years ago.
Still there, still 10%.
10%?
And there's quite a few, the list that you gave me, there's a few on there that only run at 30% capacity.
Yeah, well, the issue is when they have the wet days, they're not running at 25% capacity, like even Phoenix, like they have capacity on a dry day, but they're like double their capacity on a wet day.
Same in Mexico.
It's an issue up and down the river.
So the other side of the coin is this I think, is the part of the county that has the highest potential for growth.
Oh, I agree. No, on this, yes, definitely.
Yeah, this is ground zero. This is ground zero for.
Plus, it's gonna benefit our industrial park, so.
Yep.
That's a big. Okay, pilot EDF recapitalization update, number 16.
Mark,
Yes, sir.
you go over there, you know what's happening at the county, in terms of recapitalization and resolutions?
You're getting your 10%, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, you're getting your 10%.
I was at EEP this morning where I guess it had already been voted on, but, and it added to the budget. It came back to this morning, the resolution was passed by EEP, and I think it's gonna go back to the full legislature. But there's no anticipated.
It went to F&D already, it's, I'm telling you, I got this book, it's gone.
So what about the other 15%? Is that going into a county?
I'll tell you what, yes, the other 15% is there, and I will tell you that the county, the people that we have now, go over the plan, we'll get us the plan. We'll get you the funding. If it makes sense, we'll get you the funding.
Because a lot of that could be used for shared expenses too, for feasibility studies, for a lot of stuff.
And as I said before about playing nice with the towns and playing nice with politics, it's perception, right? It's perception that you guys are doing the right thing, and that you're spending your money wisely, and that you have a plan, and that you have do something, right? And on a positive note, then we can say, hey, look, this is what they're doing, they need more, right? Until you do that, we just gave you the 10, right? You know, we asked for the 25, expecting to get the 10. And the 25 is still on the table. It's just shows that you're gonna do something with this, that's gonna be positive and moving forward, and we're gonna do what you need, and more if you need.
No, it sounds like.
Take back to January 1st.
Yes, I guess.
Next fiscal year.
Yeah, it's in the budget.
Yeah.
It's in the budget.
And I'll say too, just from the EDP committee, it sounded, obviously there was a couple of voices in the room that were negative, but, I don't think that would have changed regardless, but the majority, I mean, everyone there.
I'm not gonna lie, there's a couple guys that are,
But in terms of the group as a whole saw the value in it and saw that there was a return on investment on those funds. And that's really, I think, what the biggest thing is that every dollar invested has a return. It's not just money going into a black hole and never be seen again. It's money that has a return on investment.
and it's perception. Everything boils down to perception, it really does, it's crazy. You send out those flyers, and I made a statement the other night, Gary at the caucus, that people saying, we don't know what's going on. I said, well, open the envelope up, take a look at it. Right, you get it, you throw it on your desk or your dresser or wherever you put your junk mail, and you don't open it, and then all of a sudden you're shocked when you find out all the good things that are going on. Like, nobody's told you, so nobody specifically called you to tell you stuff is going on, because you're not keeping yourself involved. But we do need to do a better job of promoting what we're doing, and the legislature as well, as the IPA. There's a lot of good stuff coming out of it.
Mark, I want to thank you, and I want to thank Tim Stahl for the work you did to reinstate that funding, because it's going to be critical moving forward. So, thank you very much.
Let's do it.
Well, you said you were going to work on it when you first joined the board. Yeah. Okay, annual report fiscal year ending July 31st, 2022, number 17.
Well, I'm not gonna dwell any time, everybody received a copy of this report. It's a report that is included in the parish report that goes into the state. It contains all the specific information that they're looking for in the parish report that is referred to in this report, and it's done once a year. It's usually approved at this meeting, the November meeting, and it will be, this has been partially holding up our ability with the audit to file the parish report, but now we'll be ready to go with approval of this.
So you're looking for approval of this? I'll make that one.
I'll second
Okay, motion by Nick Canale, seconded by Len Chick to approve the annual report. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
If anybody has any questions or something, on a few items in this, if you
have nothing to do and stumble over something that
Am I free to distribute this to the legislature?
it would be.
Well, I want to personally hand them out, so.
It's always, it's always, it's provided.
You wanna take copies with you to do it?
Yeah, we could get copies.
Well, I don't need them today, because we're not meeting again until the legislature in 2 weeks, but if you get them fucking
Oh,
forward,
yeah,
then great.
we'll get them.
Because I like that, instead of sending them an envelope. Here, look at what they're doing.
Usually we distribute it at the EDD.
But they're not all there, yeah, they're not all there.
Yeah, and they won't be for a while, so no, it can go over. We can email it to everybody if you want us to.
Well,
I think pretty much just like hand it
If
out.
he wants to personally hand them out, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
See the point, yeah.
There you go, there you go. Merry Christmas.
Okay, so,
Something for you.
now we got some agenda items that will be discussed in our executive session. So do I have a motion and a second to go into executive session?
Move.
Second.
Motion by Nick Canale, second by Tricia Peter Clark to go into executive session. What time, Lynn? 12:09. And Kevin, the reason we're going into executive session?
To discuss the financial history of a particular person or corporation under the Public Officers Law.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're in executive session.
They're on.
Okay, we're coming out of executive session now. Can I get a motion and a second, please, come out of executive session?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Tricia Peter Clark, seconded by Mark Greco. At what time, Len?
12:42.
12:42. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, now we have a few agenda items that we need to take action on that were discussed under executive session. The first one is a delinquent loan report, October 30th, 2022. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mark Greco, seconded by
A second.
Tricia Peter Clark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The next one is our confidential evaluation of the board performance and governance committee. Can I get a motion and a second to accept the report as written?
I'll move it.
Motion by Len Schick, seconded by
I'll second.
Mark Greco. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, the next is the sale of the Centerville Peck Road property. We have offered to purchase. Can I get a motion and a second on going ahead with the sale, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mark Greco, seconded by
A second.
Tricia Peter Clark. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. And lastly, we have Kathy's Cakes, a 6-month loan deferment request. Can I get a motion on that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mark Greco, seconded by Len Schick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Do we need to, create the pilot you approving that pilot
Usually it's just FYI,
It's just information.
but thank you. Okay, moving down to other business. Anybody else have anything they wanna bring up? Mark, you said you had a question or
No,
something?
I'll talk to Kevin later.
Oh, okay.
He's a-
Is there anything that was in executive session we need to make a motion on?
We did all yours.
Oh, we did
did
it,
them
already
We're
done.
in favor
All
of
right,
everything.
You approved them all.
I'm in.
We got it without you. You're good with all of them?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Michael asked about the next meeting. His idea was to have the meeting December 21st at 9 o'clock. Just wanna check to see if everybody's available.
First day of winter.
What day is that again? I'm sorry.
Wednesday the
Wednesday the
21st.
It's Wednesday, the 21st.
I'm not available.
I don't have an issue with that. I could do the 20th work.
Huh?
If Tricia can't do the 21st, is the 20th available work or the 22nd?
I think 20th works.
20
I'm
good work.
I'm open all day the 20th.
I'm good on the 20th.
I'm not good on the 20th. Sorry.
Yeah, troublemaker, that.
Sorry.
How about the 19th?
I'm not good on the 19th either. Out of town. I can do the 22nd.
Tricia, are you busy all day on the 21st, or is there a time you can make it?
It depends on how long the meeting's gonna last. 'Cause I have my board meeting and a couple meetings that day at the office in the afternoon. I would just have to make sure I'm back by then. Like I could do like a noon meeting, noon to 2.
You got a meeting in the morning with your board?
Yeah, well, we have we have all staff meeting and I have my senior management team meeting and a meet with the architects that morning for a project at the office.
So if we did like a 1 o'clock meeting, would that work?
She said no.
Noon?
Well, if we're gonna do 3 hours, I need at least.
Usually December isn't that busy. Meeting, is it?
There's only gonna be a couple, 2 or 3 things that have to get approved.
So
I'm
when,
fine on Wednesday at noon.
Wednesday noon
Yeah.
works for me.
Wednesday noon, does that work for you, Kevin?
One thing I would wanna have on there is TDJ to make that presentation. I mean, we could always, if we have to, we could push it to January as well, if we're not gonna be doing the inducement till then anyway, but
Well,
Just see what you got on the, agenda. Yeah, Wednesday the 21st.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Wednesday, December 21st at 12 o'clock. So that's too late for muffins, so. Michael,
Sorry. Meatball subs.
whatever.
Poor Kathy, she needs that money.
Okay, anything else?
Tim says you guys give out Christmas gifts. Are we getting gifts on the? No?
It's not Christmas.
Close enough.
Post
The whole week.
Thanksgiving?
Hanukkah. Hanukkah. Rub it Hanukkah.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mark Greco, seconded by
second,
Tricia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? thank you very much, and,
Number 47.
Was there stuff in your thinking what you wanted to ask?
Yeah, just,
Cameras are on.
you know, it's,
Oh, yeah.